good listeners? Our guest on Just Talking is writer and star Sean Crampton to discuss his new action thriller, The Stalking Fields. And let's go ahead and bring him up live on screen. Sean Crampton, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's go ahead and start preparing for what is the trailer for your brand new action thriller, The Stalking Fields.
To the Stalking Fields treatment program for which you've been selected. We here, along with the U.S. military, are part of a brand new PTSD treatment program.
The ultimate hunting therapy for our veterans.
How do we survive something like this?
Let's make it to the river.
We have the best chance if we stick together.
You think what you want? I'm making it to the river. This is hopeless. He is going to find us and kill us.
Senior Chief Marcus Woodman.
They talk like you're some big hero.
He's one of ours. He's not one of mine.
I said show me!
Somebody want to tell me what's going on around here?
Your country thanks you for making the ultimate sacrifice.
Give the CCS family a rundown of what The Stalking Field is all about.
Yeah, the Stalking Fields is about a group of civilians who get entangled with the PTSD program. And on the surface, that should be good, but it turns out to be super nefarious. And we're trying like a different angle in because Navy SEALs and special operators cost a lot of money. And so we thought that would be a big issue for the government is PTSD because now their operators aren't out in the field and they're losing money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, on a level, too, with the Stalking Fields, there's like a sense of the theater of the absurd, throughout the Stalking Fields as there's like a shifting layers of, perception and reality that come into question for the viewer. And so what is the message that you're trying to convey?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I guess there is many layers for me, but what I'm playing around with now is that I think everybody carries PTSD in certain ways, but the military sort of is galvanized the term. So everybody in the movie is experiencing or playing out their PTSD.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know on the one hand, the Stalking Fields is about a bunch of soldiers, who have been rehabilitated to get back at what they do best, kill. So why was it important to make a film addressing PTSD?
Well, my dad was a Navy SEAL for 27 years. So not only his experience, but growing up in that community in Imperial Beach, there's 4 military bases in San Diego. You can't throw a rock and not hit a military family. And our perspective, talking to my dad and some other guys early on was that Hollywood wasn't necessarily portraying it accurately or all of it or from their perspective in the special forces. So we thought it was maybe like a Trojan horse to get the conversation. I don't know what the conversation will be, but I know people aren't having it at a public level. And that's what we wanted.
Yeah, and I know for yourself, Sean, that, this film is very personal to you because you are the co-producer, writer, and star of The Stalking Fields. And so, your father unfortunately committed suicide last year in April, struggling with PTSD. And was he open about that with you during those previous years?
No. I found so much out about our family history after he died that we had 4 suicides in our family that no one ever talked about, like wild, and I'm like, that would have been helpful. But so I had my own suicide ideation in my 20s where I was like, I could probably go that way. And I asked him, thinking like, if anybody has touched the sun on this topic, it's a Navy SEAL who's doing 13 deployments. And I asked him, hey, have you ever thought about it? And he's like, no, never. And I understand he was trying to protect me, but that's how well hidden it was. He was diagnosed back in 2009, 2010 on his last deployment.
Wow.
Yeah. So
But
we
your
just had no
father,
idea.
you know, what I was reading about you, Sean, is your father didn't serve not one, not two, not three, but he served 13 deployments. That doesn't sound normal, in my opinion. How many? What's like? Do you know what's the average deployment?
Well, I don't even think they let people do that anymore. If you remember the American Sniper movie and
Oh
book,
yeah.
like that guy went back to back to back like 4 times, and they weren't thinking. And PTSD in the community was like a career killer. So my dad loved it. He loved the adventure, the brotherhood. I don't think he accounted for the PTSD. I think in some ways he hoped he got killed on the field.
But
Truly.
Sean, like, okay, because my first reaction when I read that your father went through 13 deployments was it a money incentive or is it like a calling?
It's a calling, and that's funny you use that word because that's exactly what he would have said. It's a
Wow.
calling. He never, to my perspective, he would always be like, just do what you love and the money will come. Obviously,
Yeah.
he didn't love murder or anything. He loved the brotherhood, the camaraderie, being outside, the adventure. He was very like OCD in the sense of like cleaning everything. So he liked that kind of stripping the rifle, cleaning it. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. It was definitely a calling for him, and I don't think he would change a single thing.
Well, okay. Yeah, because I know on the other hand, the stocking fields has like a not too subtle indictment, on the government
Mhm.
tendency to perform these unethical research on its people, but generally soldiers. So was this intentional to address this in the stocking fields?
Yeah, and we sort of found it more and more as we went through the edit. But the United States is based out of like our medical history is formed out of World War I and World War II, which is triage treatment, meaning you get wounded, you get treated. Whereas like Sweden's preventative, let's treat you before you get there. And so that's the same standard today. If you think about it, these guys aren't getting help. Like my dad did 13 deployments and they literally retired him in the back with the fucking handshake. There was no egress out. And if there was, it
Wow.
wasn't great. I remember one Navy SEAL telling me they sent a psychiatrist to them. And this guy was on Task Force Bruiser, which is like one of the gnarliest companies in military history, probably, or at least recent history. And he said the psychologist told them that World War II veterans had it harder. So imagine being overseas and that's the guy who's supposed to help you. And he tells you, suck it up. They had it worse 100 years ago. It's like, well, no shit, they had it worse. They're fucking in trenches. And what are we talking
Yeah,
about? So it's just
exactly, Sean.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what would you like to see change, in the year
Mm.
2023? Is there still something that's going on that because obviously you were a son to, an incredible
Mhm.
Navy SEAL, from that outside perspective, what would you like to see change?
Oh, great question. Thank you. For me, I just want to see more of a conversation, and it is happening. There's a lot of stuff happening in the AR and VR world for vets where they put on a headset and they can have therapy or augmented reality.
Okay, I don't mean to cut you off right now, Sean, because that's fascinating. We were just
Mm.
in our Say It conversation where, AI with the historical figures is starting to
Mhm.
pop up. There's, the chat GPTs, and, a lot of us young kids, even the millennials, are kind of getting a little skeptical
Mhm.
about the idea of AR and VR being more enhanced in our society. So please explain how that has been beneficial to soldiers, coming out of these war fields.
Well, they're still developing it. So it's, I was part of a pitch to the military and it was kind of crazy because our pitch was so good and they didn't select it. We got all the way up. And this is a huge company that does AR for Microsoft, Google. Like it was a big project and we got close. We got to the final round, but they didn't get selected. And my thought was they were almost too good. And the way this would have helped is like if you're a veteran suffering and you're having a moment, you could put on this set and literally say, like, I'm fucked up right now. And that program would identify how severe it is. Obviously, like if you're suicidal, it'll start calling hotlines and the police. But if
Sure.
you're more just like struggling, you can go and just be with other vets who've contributed, but it's all digitally and you hear their stories because group therapy is great in a way because you can hear someone else's rendition of what you're going through without your emotional attachment, so you can see it a lot cleaner.
Wow.
And that was the theory behind it. And then aside from that, doing
But what would you see when you put the goggles on? What would be popping up on the screen? I mean, because I
Yeah.
know they used to do that practice in Japan with some of the senior citizens,
Yeah.
and some of them are so they can't get up, their bed struck, and so some of them still wanted to travel, so they used the VR and the AR to kind of be able to travel wherever you want around the world. Is that something that you're sort of getting at?
It was more like, because I was directing it, it was more like if you put them on, depending on what number you check in at, like let's say 1 through 10, I'm a 7 today. Okay, that means you're safe, but you're probably struggling a little bit. So it'd put you in literally like a group setting, almost not like AA, but like a circle. And you look
Okay.
around and there's 10 digitized veterans. And based on what you're saying and doing, they're responding and sharing their stories. Like it wouldn't be cold, like you have no
Yeah.
idea what's about to happen. Like every one of these vets would be informed, and it probably wouldn't work because a lot of these old timers don't give a fuck. So there's lots of ways around, like plant-based medicine. Ayahuasca is having
Right.
an 80% cure rate with the Navy SEALs PTSD, but the government's not paying for it. So it's like these guys are having to go get through like the Navy SEAL Foundation and other foundations. They're having to go pay for their own treatment that the
Right.
government gave them.
Wow, that is fascinating and intriguing. And Sean, I do know when you guys were starting to get into the writer room, I know you and Jordan, your writing partner, grew up in
he's the
military
best.
families,
Mhm.
and the director Rick Maddock was a Army veteran. So
Yes.
how much military experiences were infused in the filmmaking process?
Oh man, between Jordan, Rick, and I, we had a lot, and it's interesting. We're trying to walk a fine line. There's a lot of folks out there who are like super detail oriented with shows and movies. They're like, that's not how it would be exactly. And well, you got to kind of find the balance between reality, entertainment. And I come from a background where I'm like, I'm not trying to give away tradecraft secrets either. So like people are so silly, they don't think forward there. So we had a lot. Rick like literally would take us out in the field. He was a sniper. And so I felt very confident, and I've been around guns my whole life because of my dad. Not that I'm a gun nut, but I feel safe knowing like how to handle that tool.
Yeah, because I know your father was very vocal with you because you were in the early stages of riding the Stalking fields, before he passed away. And like you kind of said at the top of the show, he had a real big problem with the depiction of Hollywood films, particularly on the war fields, about weapons and the symptom that he struggled with, PTSD. And what were some of those one-on-one conversations that he told you, Sean?
Well, it was more like, and I'm also paraphrasing, and it's from my perspective, the receipt of his input, but he basically like Shia LaBeouf, who's like I think the best actor of my generation, our generation. It's like he did a war movie, and it's very dramatic, and it's very it's like an Oscar movie. And yes, I'm sure they experienced a shade of that, but mostly with these guys, they can't fit in, or they did the thing and now they can't do the thing, and to them that gives them no purpose. And he called it behavioral avoidance. So if you got into a car accident, you wouldn't want to drive anymore. If you're a Navy SEAL, you wouldn't want to fight anymore. And we were just like, oh, that seems like it would be a big problem for the US government. Let's see maybe an interesting way how they would attack it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I know in 2018, Sean, you visited a PTSD specialist. And I kind of want to let the CCS family know, you didn't even know about your father's symptom then. You just happened to want to go to a PTSD specialist to get some body massage work.
Yeah.
And what did he tell you?
Yeah, it was a trip. I went with my ex-girlfriend, producer on a movie, Brooke, who's fucking amazing. And she was seeing this specialist because we were doing CrossFit really hard at the time and just starting to take care of our bodies. And he happened to be from the University of Chicago, was doing MDMA treatment for veterans. And the first time I'd ever heard about it. And he basically, like, imagine he could read your body like a map without ever touching it. So I've had like from rugby, I separated this collarbone twice, and without even touching me, he said you had a 2-degree separation on that shoulder. That's the kind of this guy's that experienced. And
Yeah.
so after our first and second session, I'm crying on the table, and I don't know why, but he's just touching certain parts of me and it's releasing something within the body. And afterwards, he told me, he's like, you're carrying as much PTSD as I've ever come across.
Which is just wild for
Yeah.
me to even,
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine what that even feels like, and especially someone like yourself who has never stepped on a war field.
That's right.
Have you ever like taken a step back and kind of like wondered like where that stress came from?
Yeah. So for me, and I've been doing a lot of therapy. I do individual therapy, group therapy. I'm on a men's team, which is like a support group that meets once a week to help inspire and support each other. And I do plant-based medicine. But for me, like, it's actually pretty simple. I think children are human sponges. If you really think about it, we're just like enacting what we're seeing as we grow up. So if you had PTSD, it's not like I'm a kid going, that's PTSD. It's he came home and he was edgy around this subject. So now I'm edgy around this subject. So it's not like I have the direct causation of PTSD. I have the habituation of it because as a parent, or a kid, I'm soaking in everything my parent did at the age that I was super malleable. Like I used to have severe road rage, like beyond normal. I almost broke my hand once hitting my steering wheel. I was young, and my dad was like, oh, I gave that to you. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, in Afghanistan, if you get into traffic, you're dead. And I'm like, what? And he's like, it's an ambush. So when I came home from Afghanistan, this is him telling me, he's like, I would be like this. Like, he's like, I almost killed a guy at a gas station because he cut me off 1 week after I got back from deployment. He's like, I realized I was still there.
Did your
And so
dad
I'm
have
just
like,
with him.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean.
No
I mean,
worries.
does your dad like every time, because again, your father went on 13 deployments.
Yeah.
Did he, every time that he came back home, I could imagine, it must have been difficult on you, raising to become the man that your father, Mark, wanted you to be.
Yeah.
Did he have like multiple personalities, or was he always him, but there's always like an itch that he wasn't in the moment, if you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like he's always thinking about something on the back of his mind.
That's a great question. This was a total surprise when my dad killed himself because he was as about buttoned up and dialed in and like organized and clean as you could possibly be. People loved to be around him. So I bring that up because everything was right here.
Yeah.
Like he never complained about the food. And let me tell you, lots to complain about.
Yeah,
and you know
right.
what I mean? But you can extrapolate that example everywhere. And so, he had a really brutal childhood and we were only able to talk about it twice in his whole life. And so, no judgment, but that's what happened.
No, I definitely hear you. And I know, Sean, you're on record calling America, quote, a band-aid country taking minimal measures to prevent and heal major psychic wounds of its servicemen. And I know you were talking about holistic medicine just now, and I'm not even going to try to even say the medicine, but I believe you were an advocate of what Aaron Rodgers was using back down in South America. Is that something that you would like to see some of these, servicemen and, and maybe possibly even the family members use, to kind of cure, some of that military indoctrination inside the household?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope everybody who feels called to it, they call it medicine, which at times can feel a little hokey, but it's the absolute truth. It helped me beyond belief, and I only did one ceremony. So, when you're talking directly to SEALs or CIA guys who are like, yeah, I went down to Peru and I don't have PTSD anymore. It's like, whoa, okay. And you can believe it once you've done it. So just trying to talk to it. I don't think it's for everybody or everybody on earth needs it. There's no one way to skin the cat. And that's why I'm trying to, from my part at least, bring up the conversation. So if it's just out there in the zeitgeist, there's going to be 100 angles in. And then after that, after the military, I think people in general have PTSD, but the military is just so obvious that we probably need to just start there.
I think that's a great mindset. I mean, it doesn't hurt to try, especially
Yeah.
I would definitely highly recommend it, for servicemen. I don't know about the average Joe.
Right,
I don't know if we
right.
want to go where the state of Oregon is going and just
Yeah,
legalizing everything. I
No,
think that's
no,
a
it
bit
should all be
wiki-wiki.
very proctored. It's very serious.
Right,
I take it very serious, and I have a good time. I party, but
right.
this is no joke, and so that's how I approach it.
Absolutely, Sean. And I know for inspiring filmmakers who want to make that next big step to turning their feature film into a reality, I know they're listening right now to the Chris Collins Show. What is your advice to them?
Oh, I appreciate that. I actually built an online film school called the Rebel Filmmaking Community, which I call the Soccer Mom Film School, because everybody could do it, and it's meant for everybody. It's like literally meant for people outside of LA and New York. And I take them
Okay.
through development, pre-production, production, because this is my 5th film. And so for me, watch The Offer, the Godfather show, because people ask
Oh,
me all the
wasn't it
time.
incredible on Paramount Plus? Very well done.
People
Very
go,
well done.
"What is a producer?" And I go, "Watch
Yes.
The Offer," because that's a producer. It's like overcoming no's, and you just overcome as many no's as you have to until the movie's done. And the second piece is like, no matter what the film is, it's always different. It's like opening a different business. That's how I look at it. Okay, this film's going to have a different approach. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll find it. And I make a list of everything that needs to get done. It might be, not tangibly, literally a list, but I have
Right.
a list, and then I cross off the list, and then the movie's done, right? And you just got to do it and be okay with the failures, because there will be many, and
Yep.
and just accept, like, you plan as best as you can so that you can improvise when it goes awry, because it will. There's never been a film. It's usually one thing a day on average that you're like, oh fuck. So
Right.
you just got to do it. You just got to do it, as annoying
Absolutely,
as that sounds.
Sean Crampton. And I know, what are you planning on in the new year? I mean, we got about 1 minute left,
Yeah.
but I just want to, be able to kind of have this opportunity for you to be able to kind of let the CCS family know what's good. Is there any big ambitions that you got going? Any big plans for the year 2023? A new film cooking up?
Yeah, I filmed a pilot I created last year with Bart Rome and Kyle Brady, and so we're shopping that around. I have a bunch of material that's also in different stages of development or being bought. So, and I also produce something that's being edited right now, so kind of loosely
Beautiful.
overseeing that. So, a lot going on. Just looking to take care of myself right now, and maybe lay off the gas a little bit with the hard work, and just kind of be.
Hey, well, you should be incredibly stoked with your brand new film. It's an action
Thank
thriller,
you.
CCS family. Go ahead and check out The Stalking Fields.
Yes.
It's available pretty much everywhere on
Yeah.
streaming services. So, Sean Crampton, thank you again for joining the Chris Collins Show, Millennial Talk Show.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure to meet you.
Hey, absolutely, brother.